Cool. So let's start right at the top. We're gonna do some tracks playback, and we're gonna go through one by one. And
Okay.
We're gonna listen to a kick drum here.
One thing I want to say is, I told Dustin this earlier. I know exactly what I want and what I want to hear. I'm not always that great at explaining it. So even if we get into this, if they want to ask questions now, if that's okay with you,
Yeah,
they can
totally.
ask questions right then.
Yeah, just jump on a mic and say, hey, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. And also, we are behind the PA. I didn't put any monitors up here, so we're mixing kind of in the room. So it may not sound perfect, okay, but you're gonna get the picture, okay?
So we're going to start with kick?
Yeah, start with the kick drum, all right? Now I'm gonna start the tracks. There they are.
Okay. So I'm listening for the difference immediately of what the two mics are doing. There's a lot that happens here because you do have two microphones. You can tell that Dustin's already, I think you guys can tell, actually he doesn't. Sometimes, and this is where sometimes listening to both, you might,
Delay?
You might want polarity reversal. Actually, can you hear the difference? I'll stop talking for a second. Both mics are on. I'm going to reverse the polarity of the inside mic. Did it get thinner or did it get thicker? Thicker? Okay, so in this case, we're going to leave polarity off. There are times, it all depends on the spacing and where that microphone sits, that can be a benefit to you. That's the first place I start. So if you don't want me to talk about some of this, just tell me, hey, don't worry about this.
No, you're
right
good.
now. Okay.
Great to know, right?
First thing I'm going to do, I know with a kick drum, you don't want all of that information, and you especially don't want all of this information. So the first thing I do is I boost it, and I find it. I find the nasty, and then I get rid of it.
Ooh.
That might be a little much, somewhere in there. I know with an inside mic, I'm probably going to need a little bit more, like 40, 50 hertz. And again, I can't quite tell. I can also tell there's a lot of attack in this thing. So I'm going to find that attack. You want some of that, but I don't want all of that. Because at the end of the day, I just want the kick for punch. I want to know it's there, but I don't want it to be the star of the show. So then I'll mute that, and I'll listen to the other one, and I'll do the same thing. That one's got a lot more of this. So it looks weird, and at the end of the day, sometimes it's better if you just cover it and listen.
Mix with your ears, not with your eyes.
You can get a lot of that.
Ooh.
I don't know what that sounds like, but maybe it sounds okay.
Sounding good.
I can't tell.
Goodish from behind
I
the
can't
PA.
really hear it. So normally, at this point, we would have done a line check, so I'm going to know my gain structure. Obviously, I'm not messing with gain because we're kind of there. This is kind of the best way. Like, if you do have tracks, I feel like this is the best way to kind of get your mix going because a sound check or a line check, people are never doing. They're never doing exactly what they do when they actually play. So I love that you have this at least now, and you're able to kind of mess with it.
If you're interested and want to do more of this as we go through this, like, that's be really beneficial, just contact me. It's always available here. Unfortunately, not everywhere. We just don't have the capability and means to do that. But it is always here, so you can schedule a time with me anytime you want. We can come in and do this all day long, okay?
This is how you really can craft and really figure out the why behind what you're doing, not just, I do this on Sunday and I've got to get it done. This really helps you understand really why you do it.
Yeah.
So I just moved down the line. So I'm going to go kick, snare, hat, and I'll move kind of quick so we're not wasting too much time, maybe. You tell me.
We all want to learn. Be in depth. Break it down.
Again, high pass. Can't really. There you can, I'll show you what what the high pass does. It's just like, that's not what a snare is supposed to sound like. But then you can also hear the kick in that snare, and I may not necessarily want all that. I kind of find that balance where that sits.
Yeah.
New song. Okay. Because I can't really hear it, I don't know for sure. Depending on the snare and the player, a lot of times I can actually do a flat snare. I will sometimes do some decent dynamics on a snare. I didn't really talk about dynamics on the kick, actually. I should have probably done that. They talked about compression. So that's actually, if you see that, it's getting 12 dB of gain reduction. Right now, I'm gonna play with that and maybe not do that. It's gonna give you a lot more. I usually go with a little higher ratio, faster release, and a pretty fast tack time. A tack time is how fast it's going to get into the compression, and release is how fast it's going to let go of the compression. Oh, wrong one. That release. See, I'll explain that release to you. See how it sucks it and holds it? Or if I do release really fast, you can't ever tell it's doing anything. So that is actually pretty important as you get into compression.
A kind of a general basic home base would be about 20 milliseconds of attack, 60 of release as a general starter point. You always want to, like I said, use your ears and tweak accordingly, but if you're like, I need to do this, go 20 and 60 to start. JB, you an 80s fan? Journey, Toto?
I do like some big snare. There are times, guys, when it calls for it, and I'll do this even.
Come on with that.
Give it some low frequency, just make it crazy. It just depends. In the worship, it doesn't always make the most sense, but it can be a big old. Did I do that right? You can really feel that big snare, you know. But still, this will get out of hand, that 250. So you might have to get rid of some of that. So again, it's all preference at this point. Preference in a sense. I think there are some right and wrongs, but for the most part, this is an art too. So I'm trying to take what the band is creating and just make it translate. It's sound reinforcement. It's not sound creation. So I'm taking their inputs, and good inputs make great mixes. But I'm taking those and just trying to reinforce them the way. The only thing that doesn't apply to, in my mind, is really the kick drum. The kick drum does not sound spectacular, no matter how you slice it, if you just walk up and stand next to it.
In general, the whole drum kit is kind of where we have the most microphones. It's kind of where we have to do the most correction because we want it to be awesome.
Absolutely.
Not only that, but just the way the microphones all interact, we kind of have to make the most correction and choices there, and because it's what we have the most control over in general. As in terms of that deep snare, that thuddy snare we want, or that kicky,
that's
punchy.
That's a drastic change.
Yeah, it's very drastic.
That I'm making to that snare. That could be right, could be wrong. It's, of course, that's fine. But we'll keep moving, and we'll see what happens. Snare bottom, did we have? Usually we do. We flip polarity on the bottom, which it is already. You can't always hear it, but it usually does make sense just because they're two opposing diaphragms and they're moving in the opposite directions. So the top mic diaphragm's moving this way, the bottom diaphragm's moving this way. You kind of want them working together and not in opposite fashion. I think there's something wrong with that one. It's okay, though.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll skip that. Snare bottom we'll skip for now. Is the verb? So verbs, I'm not going to spend much time on that because you can I'll spend as much time figuring out verbs as I will almost the whole mix. I'll feed verbs into delays and all that kind of stuff to make crazy sounds, which will take
Just
a
know
long
that,
time.
Let me hear that a little bit more. Can you trim that up some?
Which one is it?
On the,
Oh,
that
just,
verb up?
I got you.
So you just hear, the reverb is that echo. That's the reverb effect. So we're able to control that part individually via that knob. Oh yeah, you hear that? You cut out all that out of it.
So that's opposite for me, but he's got that. I should pan it that way. So as you look at the drums, you kind of pan the instruments a little bit to match. So that's why he's got it to your right, which would be correct. As you look at it up here, that's a lot of hi-hat. We probably don't need all that, sorry. So that's why we use a high pass. That's just one channel and all that mess coming through. So we'll get rid of all of that. And then maybe a little bit of sit that back where it goes. Okay. Toms are going to be hard if we don't find a place where they...
Yep, I think I got one. Oh, I so got this.
So got it.
I got two.
All right.
Ooh.
So the first thing let's start without compression. Let's look at the gate. Is it on? So that's what the gate, like, way engaged. So the tom's not breaking through. So we want to make it so that when he hits it pretty lightly, it breaks through, but the cymbals don't break that tom open, or the gate open, if that makes sense. That might be a bad explanation. But you see how that hi-hat's now coming through the tom? We can get rid of that. Oh, no, never mind.
There it is.
Thanks. I've done this before. It's going to be somewhere in there. And while he's doing that. Again, I'm a big fan of finding the frequency that I don't like, and then I get rid of it. I can't tell if it's too much. Sometimes, depending on the tom, I'll add some of that. Sometimes it's too much and I need to get rid of it. Just depends.
This is where the quality of your drum set, the proficiency of your drummer, and their tuning, how good that shape the heads are in, all that stuff comes into play here.
Overheads, same thing. We're going to get rid of some of that stuff. You talked about the overheads, though. They're not just the cymbals. That's why we call them overheads. They are the entire drum set. He talked about time aligning those to the center of the snare, because you will get phasing, true phasing, not just polarity, because things are arriving at different times.
Comb filtering, yeah.
Yep. So that's why we try and keep that at a nice triangle to the snare. You're going to get hi-hat. There's stuff you're never going to get rid of, so you're trying to make it so that it enhances the entire kit. So I try not to do too much. Sometimes they'll get a little out of hand in the high frequency, and you might just do a little shelf to cut all that down. I can't tell what that sounds like, guys. It might sound like pure trash. I apologize. Okay. You want to stop for a second? I can't hear what it sounds like, but that's my process for the drums. That's about how fast I can move. It's about how fast we get there. Are there questions, comments, concerns?
Do you guys notice how every step first was a cut, not an add? We always want to see what's wrong in here and remove that before we go adding anything else, okay?
Rarely do you have to add. Maybe some low frequency. If you're adding, it's very much a color, a specific color that I'm looking for.
We want to add some more oomph into the kick drum, maybe some oomph into the snare to get that deep thud we want, or maybe a little bit of top end into the cymbals, or probably not, but maybe.
Depends. It just depends.
Yeah.
The type of cymbals, the player, all of that can make all of that.
So, but typically, almost everything was cuts. So keep that in mind. And also, you notice on that first kick drum, when he first took out that notch, how much different it sounded. Like cutting the low mids actually made those super lows just pop right out. It's like addition by subtraction type of thing.
And that's what we're looking for with the kick drum. The kick drum, we want it. Everything has its musical and spectral space in the mix. So I'm, just. That also becomes a problem like with a keyboard player, because he's got the entire spectrum at his fingertips, and keeping him out of that lower register, those lower octaves. We've got a bass player, we've got a kick drum, we don't necessarily need him down there playing. And a great player will know that and play to those strengths. But also we can help that with frequencies. I know the kick drum doesn't need to occupy that mid band. It needs to just be in that low band. Now there will be some high frequency information from a kick, but it's understanding where all that stuff needs to sit will help in the long run, kind of build the overall mix and not have a muddy or, less than desirable mix.
Yeah. So we have a drum reverb. We have the snare verb, which we're taking just the snare top goes into the snare reverb effect, just to get that effect that we need. Then the drum reverb, that's sent via an aux, which you have over here in this bank. And there's a drum verb. And we're sending primarily the toms in that. We typically send a little bit of hi-hat and typically not quite that much, a little bit of a kick in. Just get a little bit of a just a little air on it, but definitely those toms in there primarily to get a lot of that. I don't think it's not playing back right now. No, it's not routed in this session right now, but, well, yeah. Anyways, just like that snare verb you heard of that echo, we're looking for that same type of thing in the drum reverb. That's what that's there for. So if you saw that, you could try that.